Good morning, students. I hope you are safe, hale and hearty during this extended lockdown phase. And students of class 9, I am ready to take you through the second chapter that has been given in the prescribed book that we have. The name of the chapter is Geographic Grid, Latitudes and Longitudes. Now, like the first chapter which I have already taught, this chapter is also more or less a revision of all the things that you have studied right from class 3 upwards. I think you know what are latitudes, I think you know what are longitudes, and the prominent features of these two lines you must have studied. So more or less it is a revision chapter with just a few details which you may not have been taught in the junior classes. So we will go through this chapter quickly, starting with the term geographic grid. The term geographic grid means a crisscross or network of these lines. Now, the earth is generally shown as a circle. In this circle, within this circle, geographers have thought of these lines, both are imaginary lines. If we go to hunt for them on the earth's surface, they are not there. Though for the sake of convenience, they have been marked there. For instance, Tropic of Cancer, 23.5 degree north latitude. If you know, through the outskirts of Ranchi it passes by. Clear? So on the sphere, within the sphere, the first latitude which I draw and show to you is the 0 degree latitude. You know its name. It is equator. And the first longitude, this is your 0 degree meridian, which is known as prime meridian. Please note, if there is still any confusion within you, latitudes are horizontal lines, and the starting line of latitude runs through the middle of the earth, dividing the earth into northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. Longitudes are vertical lines, straight lines that divide the earth into, especially the starting line, prime meridian, divides the earth into eastern and western hemisphere. Clear? So this is the basic thing about these latitudes and longitudes which you have studied earlier. Now, where these latitudes and longitudes crisscross each other, like this, the vertical and the horizontal lines where they crisscross, we get grids. These small squares, this one is not a square, these small squares, they are grids. And if you remember, the purpose of both these imaginary lines is to accurately locate a place on the map, whether it is a world map, whether it is a map of a particular continent, or whether it is a map of India. So this is your primary thing that you need to remember. This grid system which we find in the atlas, this is for your general knowledge which I am telling you, the grid system which we find in the atlases has been termed as the national grid. It is followed through the entire world. Okay? Now, a quick revision of latitudes and longitudes. And these latitudes and longitudes, the first person who thought about them was again the same Greek philosopher whose name I have told you earlier, Eratosthenes, a Greek philosopher. Remember, I told you he was the first person to calculate the circumference of the earth. He was also the first person to think about latitudes and longitudes, to create a grid for the purpose of locating places. Okay, now we take a comparative study and a revision of the latitudes and longitudes, and in this we take that as a heading and we study it together. Now, latitudes, how do we define them? We take the first point, they are angular distances, north and south of the equator. Clear? For locating places north and south of the equator, we take the distance according to the angle of the place, angle from the center of the earth. Longitudes are the same, I'm not repeating it, angular distances, but after angular distances it is east and west of the prime meridian. This is the definition of the two lines plus an important information. After every line of latitude, when we are writing the figure, when we are writing 1 degree or 20 degrees or 82 degrees, we will write, if we want to show it is a latitude, we will write either N or S. N means in the northern hemisphere, S means in the southern hemisphere. Likewise for longitudes, if it is 30 degree longitude, we are writing it as east or west. We are indicating what is the location of that line and the places along that line. What is their location? Now, the second point of comparison. Latitudes are also known as parallels of latitude, and longitudes are also known as meridians of longitude. Why? Parallels of latitude, they are called because all the latitudes are parallel lines, and from your maths you know parallel lines never meet. No matter which side you extend them, they will continue to be equidistant. They will never meet. For example, in a small figure I will show you, all these lines are equidistant. They don't meet. That is why the term parallels of latitude. And here only one information I will add on. The distance between any two latitudes in degrees is 1 degree, and in kilometers it is 111 kilometers. Clear? I repeat, 1 degree angular distance is equal to 111 kilometers on the Earth's surface. So this information helps geographers to do calculations. Now coming to meridians. This term meridian is from a Latin word, and the word means noon time. Noon is midday. What is to be remembered? Over each longitude, the longitude lines, this is the central one, prime meridian, then they run like this. They are like this. On one part or one side of the globe, they look like semicircles, right? Now these meridians, the sun moves over these meridians, and at exact 12 o'clock daytime or midday, the sun will be vertically overhead one meridian. Means at 90 degrees, right on top of our heads. From the position of the sun only we come to know the timing. Clear? So because of that, they are known as meridians. They help in time calculation. See how they look. Next point of comparison. Total number of latitudes are 181 in number. How is that? From 0 to 90 degrees in the northern hemisphere, sorry, we take it from 1. From 1 degrees to 90 degrees, there are 90 latitudes. Again, This is in the northern hemisphere. In the southern, again from 0 to 90 is another 19 number. Plus we have to count the equator. So that is why plus 1. That is why we are getting total 181 latitudes. Longitudes, when we start counting from 0 degree meridian till the last meridian, from this side the last will be 180. And from this also the same line we take into consideration. Clear? So 180 is a single line coinciding with the prime meridian. So total number of longitudes is 360, not 361. Clear? This you must have studied. I have explained the reason why the difference in number is there. Next point, we move on. The fourth point we take as a comparison for latitudes and for longitudes. Now latitudes are unequal lines. Unequal lines. And longitudes are equal lines. Clear? They meet at the poles. At the north and the south pole they meet. You see this figure here? All the longitudes are meeting at the south pole here and at the north pole here. Whereas in case of the latitudes, the longest latitude is the equator. As we move towards the north pole, the size goes on decreasing and north pole is just a dot. As we move towards the south pole, the size goes on decreasing, south pole is just a dot. So that is another point of difference. Next point about the latitudes and the longitudes is regarding the uses. The uses will be forming another point. Now latitudes are used for locating places. This is one use. Number one use. Secondly, for measuring distances. And thirdly, for dividing the earth into climatic zones or heat zones also we call them. And I think you have studied about heat zones in the junior classes. So there are three uses of the latitudes. I am presenting it like this so that you know the difference in the uses. Coming to longitudes, it is mainly used for calculating time. For calculating time, and second, for traveling purposes. I will be explaining this a little bit later. For traveling purposes. Clear? So you have got a comparison. I may have missed out some points. We will cover it up as we proceed through the chapter. But these are 5 points of comparison between latitudes and longitudes.